Arden Zwelling is here a day before you leave tomorrow, right?
I do.
Yeah.
How'd you know that?
Because I asked you.
Oh, all right. Fair.
Dude, this happens
Fair play.
all the time when people. This is truly a huge part of my life. People will go, "How did you get that information?" It's because I asked you a week ago, and then you forgot.
Yeah, I didn't even know I told you that.
I think I have the best memory.
Yeah? No, that's impressive. There was no reason for you to remember that.
No,
you
there
didn't need
was.
that information.
No, it was because I said, "When are you leaving for spring?"
Yeah.
That's how the conversation started.
Oh,
I said,
yeah.
"I want to get you in studio before you leave."
This rings a bell.
Yeah, this is why you're here.
All right.
It's the whole premise. It really wasn't that impressive. It really wasn't that impressive.
The thing is, I'm going through that time now, that phase of
Yeah.
like small talk with everybody where it's like, when are you going down?
Oh,
Where are
yeah.
you staying?
Okay.
How long you down there for? So I just like immediately just, go into autopilot and just don't even remember those conversations happen.
Well, plus you're probably trying to figure out things in your personal life in terms of how long you're going to be, you got to work things up with the wife. How long do you go for?
I'll be down there till the bitter end.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So you're there.
Yes.
So yeah, you're figuring, what do you do? Do you hotel or do you do Airbnb?
I hotel, but I hotel with a kitchen. Like a,
I was
so
gonna
that
say,
I can
'cause
have
that's a
somewhat
long
of a
time.
normal life.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's nice though. Work's just, like out work. I want a kitchen. They're like, of course.
It's not a nice hotel.
Anything for you on field reporter.
It's
TV guy.
I don't even want to get. It's a residence inn. No, they're not paying you anything. It's not a nice hotel.
Does it have a nice pool?
It has a pool.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't.
not nice.
Some people may have died in it. Right?
Yeah.
Like recently.
That's always funny when you look at a place and it says pool, but it doesn't have photos.
Mm-hmm.
And you go in with that, and you're like, "What is this?" Or the pool photo is taken like from a weird, far away angle, and then you show up and it's that, and you're like, "Oh no, this is actually a crappy, rusty gate. They clearly don't clean this every single day. No one's by the pool for a reason."
Right.
I think I'll pass.
Or the photo was clearly taken in like 1998.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's actually that's the big Airbnb move. It's like take the photos day one, and then you show up at the place, and it's like, oh yeah, this place is beaten up. You've had 1,000 people here. You've had a million people come through who didn't treat it like their own house.
There's a billboard in the background of the photo that's like Step Brothers in theaters now.
yeah, pretty much. So you wrote this article that I read as Gap to Gap at Blue Jays camp. Spring's faux storyline starting to take shape. And you start this thing with remember Greg Bird. And I went, I did enjoy that time. I did enjoy the Greg Bird narrative. And basically you're illustrating that we get way out of control with some spring training narratives and the idea that guys are really going to make camp and that the GM hasn't already figured out who's going to be on the team. But with this Blue Jays group, it actually does feel a little different just in terms of some of the back-end roster questions in comparison to years past. Like, they've got a ton of infielders. They brought in Escobar, and, from your piece, I was kind of gleaning that you think he's a long shot. I read Shai's piece, though, and he was like, I think that they gave him some assurances to be here that he would be like more of a contender for a roster spot. I wonder if this year actually is an actual season where jobs are on the line. Like, someone could actually tilt the scales just enough to be able to grab a roster spot.
I think he is a long shot just based off of the performance last year.
He sucked.
Like, I can typically come in here.
Frank the Tank calls him Easy Out Escobar. It's the best. He has a song and everything. It was like, I really hope we get it just so that we get to sing that song.
The usual thing that you'll make fun of me for is I'll be like, his results last year were terrible, but look at the underlying stuff and look at the peripherals. I can't even do that with him.
Yeah.
The underlying stuff is
he stunk.
It's not good either. The peripherals are not good either.
He's a good culture guy, though, apparently.
100%. He's hilarious. Look up his mic'd up videos from the Apple TV games. He is a riot. So from my perspective, I'd love to have him around. But when I look at the amount of, as you said, middle infielders, third baseman types who are above him and already on the 40-man roster, you're going to need some sort of a 40-man condensing trade or some sort of an injury for him to really get in there.
Okay, so on this point, though, I'm still surprised that they never got rid of Espinal. And I feel like that shoe... Like, do you think that the door is closed on that?
I don't think it was there for them, right? Like, the move wasn't there.
Yeah, but the move was just to go, here you go, somewhere else.
Oh, goodbye.
Cash. Yeah.
Nah, he's still got value, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want to have him just like, non-tender him or
How much
DFA
value,
him
really?
or He's an all-star, former all-star.
I think everybody's an all-star now. Honestly, the Blue Jays have had a lot of obscure all-stars over the years, but he definitely fits the bill for that.
Do you see Whit Merrifield the other day in Philly? Yeah, I was an all-star last year.
I went, yeah. You were.
You were. Yeah, you went to that game.
You went to that game, and you were hot to start the season.
Yep.
The second half of that year was, not as impressive. And the fielding last year was probably a bit of an underrated story in terms of, the one guy that you didn't love in the infield, one defensively.
Whit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, okay, so
but with Espinal, look, he's still 28. He has shown some things at the big league level. I would take Espinal this year and what he's making over whatever you guaranteed Escobar that he would make if he makes the club. And we don't know that figure yet. We know for Vogelbach it's $2 million, right? But for Escobar, we don't actually know what the freight would be, what the cost would be. But I like Espinal going into 24 more than I would like Escobar.
Do you think either of those guys makes the roster?
I don't think Escobar does. I think Espinal has
No, sorry,
a path.
not Espinal, yeah, but I meant Vogelbach.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so. It's hard, right? He is so limited in the way that you can deploy him, right? You can't use him against lefties. You can't use him in the field. You can't use him on the bases. So he's like a pure platoon DH bat for your bench, which is like an interesting luxury to have for a super versatile young team. But the Blue Jays have a 39-year-old whose primary position is DH, and they got a 34-year-old in right field who gets a DH day once a week. And they've got a player at first base who has battled physical ailments over the last couple of years and could probably use an extra DH day here and there. So I just don't know that it's a great fit for the Blue Jays. I think Vogelbach's bat is legit big league bat, and I think he could go somewhere and get 250, 300 plate appearances and have a 110 OPS.
I was just going to say, he reeks of that, right? He reeks of the Blue Jays let him go, and then people on Blue Jays Twitter never letting the idea out of their minds of they could have had this guy for $2 million, and look what he's doing with this other team where he actually has more opportunity.
I just don't think it's a great fit for the Jays roster as presently constructed.
Agree. But that's what ends up happening when your big offseason acquisition is Justin Turner at 39 years old.
And say Justin Turner gets hurt in camp, or say Vlad gets hurt, right?
Then he's
all
around.
of a sudden things change. Say Espinal gets hurt, Davis Schneider gets hurt, right? All of a sudden things change for Escobar. It's just another layer of insurance.
Sure.
Right? And you do a solid to those players. You give them a great training environment in Dunedin. You give them plate appearances.
Yeah. So that's it to you. This is injury insurance, having those two guys around, more than it actually is. Let's see what they've got left in the tank. Maybe they make the team, because I don't want to make too big of a deal of this, but I did have the thought maybe a week ago of when they first got these guys. All right, they always say the whole there's no such thing as a bad minor league deal, right? Or there's no such thing as a bad spring training invite. But
unless it's like Trevor Bauer. Yeah.
I got different thoughts on that. I'm not with the consensus on that one. But
I don't think he's someone you want to bring into your environment right now. I don't think you want to invite that circus in.
Yeah.
You don't want him going around the clubhouse filming YouTube videos right now when you're trying to win a championship. You're trying to keep everybody on the same course. You don't want that.
I think for the league minimum money to get a former Cy Young winner who was just proven to be innocent, I would think about something like that. Anyways,
then when you cut him loose, you don't want him going on podcasts and saying all this stuff about
I understand
you
there's
and
drawbacks. I understand there's drawbacks, but I will say that
it's not worth the headaches.
Sure. So you say. Anyway, is there at least a little bit of a risk of when you bring these older guys in that you're taking stuff away from younger guys?
In terms of playing time opportunity?
Yeah, you're playing, and I know they play a billion of these Grapefruit League games and they got split squads, and but just in terms of attention you get and coaching you get and plate appearances, because you said it, you're giving these guys plate appearances. That does come at the expense of somebody. Oh, yeah. This is a team that has not really developed well over the last few seasons. I don't know how integral spring is to the development of players. I'm guessing that the seasons of games is far more important. But yeah, I did have that thought when they brought those guys in, is all right, Where does that take away from? Does that take away from something?
Not really. You play so many spring games. You have so many split squad situations. Like, you're right. Vogelbach's going to play a ton, and Escobar will probably play a lot too.
That's
but
what I mean.
I know Vogelbach's been promised like a lot of plate appearances.
But that's it. The only way to incentivize these guys to show up is if you're saying you're going to get a lot of run here.
You get a lot of time, in our games, and you get to train in our environment, right? Like, if you're a minor league free agent, you're choosing between the Blue Jays and their facilities and like the Orioles and their facilities. You're choosing the Blue Jays. It's just a better environment to train. They're just better resources and stuff. All the, and I know that people roll their eyes, but like all the stuff about the player development complex that everyone's heard about, players are like want those resources. Players are attracted to that.
The only win from the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes for Toronto was that people really got to understand how beautiful that place is. It's like what that place actually looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but this is what that piece that you were referencing earlier was about, is that we spend 6 weeks during spring training like chasing our tails over these edge of roster players, over these Greg Birds, over the out of options guy. Remember the year when it was like, what are they going to do with Dalton Pompey? He's out of options. They're going to expose him to waivers. He's a cop right now listening to this, right? Like, what are they going to do with Anthony
Alford? He won't
Alford?
do podcasts. I hate it because I want to have him on the show and talk about this. He's out. He's out on it.
What are they going to do with Anthony Alford? Are they going to expose him to waivers? Someone else is going to get him. He's still 24. He's got so much potential. He's like in Korea now, right? Like, we spend so much time worrying about Greg Bird, right? When he went back to the Yankees, people are outraged. This guy tore the cover off the ball all spring, assimilated to the clubhouse. Blue Jays had extra roster spots that year because of the pandemic. He was like exactly what they needed in terms of a left-handed bat on the bench. They were super right-handed heavy. I mean, everybody thought he was on the team, except for the Blue Jays, who were like, we kind of think you're cooked. Turned out he was. He went back to the Yankees. Everyone was outraged. The Yankees released him. He plays in Australia now. He played last summer. He was playing in Quebec. He was playing indie ball. You want to see Greg Bird? Go up Auto Route 20. You can see him playing in Quebec for Capitals. You can see him.
So I get the premise. And of course, there's going to be a million examples of guys that we wrote about, talked about, and discussed whether or not the merits of them based on spring numbers. To me, this is actually one of the more fun things about being a baseball fan, straight up, is looking at the teams during camp. And it's spring. You get the hope of the team. You get to have the idea of someone who, who's this guy? That's every baseball movie is some guy shows up. And all of a sudden, the old grizzled manager is he's spitting tobacco, and he's looking at the young player going, this guy's opening eyes. We want to have those stories.
Movie.
Yeah, but that's
and life isn't a movie.
For sure. But having those discussions and having those stories, to me, is actually a really fun part of baseball. It's a really fun part of spring, because once you do get down to the regular season, we've been able to math this sport out to the point where there's not a ton of debates, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. Once you get a certain sample of a player, you're kind of like, well, this is the take. Like it's.
And our brains love stories,
yeah,
right?
And I like some spring stories.
They love narratives,
Yes.
right? We love those shortcuts.
So this is where I want to go.
But it's not reality.
Okay, but what is the spring story to you, though, that you're going down there and saying, you know what, I'm really interested in how this plays out down here?
How does Alek Manoah's stuff look?
Yeah, okay. Bingo.
How's his slider look?
Yeah.
How's his velo?
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge one, right?
Okay,
Like,
it's been kind of quiet so far.
in terms of like how the stuff looks.
Everything, yeah.
I don't know that he's like thrown, you know, in an environment where we'd have access to it.
Okay,
right?
but I am saying, but that's kind of where I'm going with this is there's been already a little bit of buzz of Tiedemann where people are saying, oh my God, this guy looks amazing. And the players around him are going, this guy looks amazing.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of Bowden Francis might actually be better than people think buzz, right?
Right.
And I just think it's interesting that so far, and maybe that's a setting expectation thing, that's a controlling the narrative thing. You're right. They haven't had a big opportunity to see him yet. That's going to happen further down the line. But you're saying nothing to see here so far with Manoah based on my perception of what the narratives have been so far. Because I would just think that, like with Vladdy's body, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about another bounce back guy who's super important to the team. We've had a billion things written about, like, look how good Vladdy looks. Look at the training that he's been doing. Oh, all of a sudden he's looking like he's swinging the bat better. Oh, Vladdy's going to maybe have a monster year. Buy Vladdy stock now. Vladdy's not upset at the baseball team about the arbitration stuff.
Right.
But the Manoah, it's just been...
There was a lot of best shape of his life with Manoah.
There was a great shape of his life, but we all know that that was only one little piece of the puzzle when it came to him bouncing back next year. And sort of the implication to me was, hey, he's quote-unquote battling for a fifth spot.
He's not.
But he's not. He's the fifth starter.
Yep. 100%. That's another story we're going to tell ourselves.
Yeah, until Ricky Tiedemann looks way better than him, and maybe Bowden Francis even looks better. What happens if he's the third guy?
It's just
He'll still make it.
so Bowden Francis has options and Mitch White doesn't. So the most likely thing that happens there is Mitch White's on the opening day roster and Bowden Francis is in Buffalo. Ricky Tiedemann.
If Mitch White was 25% less handsome, would he be even a consideration to be on this baseball team?
He was throwing 97 at the end of the year last year. Look at his final 8 to 10 starts.
God, Blake Murphy hopes so because he went all out for Mitch to me when I was like, who? He was this guy.
He gets taken on waivers if you expose him to waivers. Right. Mitch White this year is in the position Bowden Francis was in last year. Think about it. Like, what, 4, 5, 6 months ago, Mitch White was DFA'd. He was on waivers. Anyone could have had him. They send him back to Buffalo. Velo tick at the end of the year looked really good. Bowden Francis did that a year ago. DFA'd middle of the year on waivers. Anybody could have had him. So he went back to Buffalo. Velo tick at the end of the year looked really good. Came in the spring and killed it. So Mitch White's on like that same trajectory. He has to go out there and do it. But everyone loves Bowden Francis right now. Who was talking about him a year ago? I was the only guy writing about how the velo was up and how he did that and how he went in the lab and all the stuff the Jays did with them and how this guy actually has potential. So,
I just like how Bowden Francis last year, just basically any situation they threw him in, he was good.
He's so composed.
That's it.
He's so calm.
That's it. He was just the same, and maybe. I really don't mean this as a shot at Manoah, but it was so night and day in terms of the way Manoah looked, which was just pressing the entire, like every experience you had with Manoah. And then all of a sudden they threw Bowden Francis in there. There's something to be said about no expectations, right? Because even the name is like a creative player name. It's like, it's a name that is almost created to be forgotten. Like, do you remember Bowden Francis? Like that goes on a trivia list and you're like, oh, right. Bowden Francis from the 2023 season. He had a cup of coffee and then it was nothing else. But his year was just impressive. It was, here's the guy that does the same thing over and over again. Whatever role they put him in, he seems to just do it fine. Wasn't spectacular, wasn't incredible, but was solid. And to me, that's kind of what you want from your fifth starter, right? Like you don't want the guy who's blowing up some starts and then showing like an extra bit of promise on the given night. Like I love the idea that he's versatile, but you're right. The options thing clearly makes sense with him. I continue to wonder what it is going to look like if spring, that story about Manoah devolves into, it doesn't look great.
It would have to look pretty bad, right? Yeah. Like you think about how much run the Blue Jays gave Manoah last year when he was literally the least effective pitcher in baseball. And we got all these crazy stats about how, wow, nobody's ever thrown this many innings of like this type of ERA or this type of exit velo and all that. Because pitchers who look like that typically don't get that amount of rope. Alek Manoah got a ton of rope last year when he, meritocratically didn't necessarily deserve it. And by the end of the year, Bowden Francis, on merit, was better than Manoah. It's not just the composure that he was showing on the mound that you're talking about. It's the stuff. Velo, location, command, landing a curveball. Like he was a more reliable pitcher to get you outs towards the end of the year last year than Manoah was. He might still be now. We haven't seen either of them on the mound yet, right? So all these stories and narratives are nice, but let's see how guys actually look, how the stuff actually looks on the mound. But spring training, like it's not always a meritocracy. Like teams aren't really trying to build the most competitive roster for opening day. They're trying to build like the deepest, most versatile roster for 6 months. They're thinking marathon. They're not thinking sprint.
I think that's a really great point because in our minds, that's the way we think about it. Like it's NFL training camp.
Yeah.
We always think like all training camps are NFL training camp, where there's the special teamer, right, that found his way on the roster because in the third preseason game, he made a play that popped on film and the coaches went, this guy has a motor and we want to have this guy's motor in here. And he made a big play. He forced a fumble. He made the recovery. The teammates love him. We want to keep him in the locker room. It's like it's a 53-man roster where the compete level matters and you can have the short window where that could have a real impact on your team. The baseball long con or the long view of how the year is going to go, that what you hit on is the way that we, I think, need to reframe our minds, our thinking when we're looking at this stuff a little bit.
That's how front offices think about it. But, people
But I think it's an easier way to digest it as a fan where you're like, when you're confused as to why a decision is made a certain way. It's like, because it's an easy one when you go options, right? You go, option. Okay, I got that. That's easy for me to process. When you talk about that way, that line of they're thinking about the best long-term team, not just the best team that's going to happen in April. That makes so much sense.
They don't want the best odds to win opening day.
Yeah.
They want the best odds to win over 6 months. So that might mean like optioning somebody at the end of spring training who like is perhaps more deserving meritocratically of a spot because you're going to need that guy down the line. Like the Blue Jays aren't going to use 6 starters again all year. They're going to need Bowden Francis. They're going to need Mitch White. They're going to need Ricky Tiedemann. They're going to need Chad Dallas. Like they're going to need CJ Van Eyck. They're going to need all these guys. So
Chad Dallas, big porn star name there. I was like, who is he?
I hadn't thought of that. I'll leave that. I'll leave that
Ladies
to you.
and gentlemen, Chad Dallas. You don't see him at the AVNs? I do. But anyways,
I got to go talk to him this week, so I can't say things like that.
Hey, guess what? Now that's in your head.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. That's going to be what you're thinking of when you're talking to him. Okay, so when you talk about the meritocracy thing, what do you think the odds are that right now Ricky Tiedemann is one of the team's best 5 starters?
High.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah,
he's really good. But his clock hasn't started yet.
Sure.
The Blue Jays are wildly incentivized to not start it at the beginning of the year. Like the Blue Jays are thinking about finishing off his development. He just got to AAA at the end of last year. And then also with him, there's workload concerns, right? Because how many innings did he throw last year? Plus, like how much stuff was done in the lab and on the side, back mounds and stuff like that all counts. That workload counts. But you're not throwing this guy for 200 innings. So if you put him in your rotation on opening day and he's going 5-6 innings every time out, like you're gonna push is gonna come to shove very quickly. Where it's like, oh geez, like we're burning a lot of bullets here. Ricky Tiedemann starts at AAA, probably throwing like 3-inning outings. That's what he did last year. Started AA, throwing 3-inning outings. You bring him along progressively and you manage the workload because when you really need him is in the second half of the year.
So I don't think he's making the team. I don't think anybody does for those reasons that you just stated. Yeah. It's all very logical. What I think is going to be very interesting is for a team that feels pretty desperate in terms of winning games. Like you said the thing about Alek Manoah's leash, right?
Yep.
That was last year. I don't know what the Alek Manoah leash for the 5th starter job is this season. Here's my guess, though. Ain't as long as it was last year.
I agree.
It ain't going to be months of, oh, don't worry, you can walk everybody on the planet and we'll try to make excuses for you. And I thought it's kind of interesting, too, that the pitch clock even made another adjustment, right? They went from now it's 20 seconds was last year with guys on base, and now it's 18.
Shaved off 2 seconds.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's something. It's another something for a guy that didn't like the pitch clock and kind of struggled with it. And yeah, he's in the best shape and whatever, but there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot working against him in terms of having Bowden Francis down there and then Ricky Tiedemann being sexy. But then there's an element of it where you've seen the new seats, right?
Yeah.
Like the new configuration of the ballpark looks great. Looks like they lost a lot of seats in the 100s, but it's all pointing towards home plate. They want to get people in there. They want to get people in the suites. They want people to be excited about this baseball team. And there's not a hell of a lot to be overly excited about that feels new and fresh and fun. Like, I don't know about anybody that is going to buy a ticket because Justin Turner plays for the Blue Jays now. Right. I'm sorry. I just don't think that's happening. They're going to buy a ticket because Vladdy bounces back and people want to get down there to see him. They'd love to see Manoah bounce back, but if he doesn't, I can promise you right now, like for that front office that might be fighting for their jobs, and for this fan base that really needs a story and a guy that they can go, hey, I want to go down and watch Ricky Tiedemann pitch tonight. That's got to be an awfully tempting lever to pull if he makes a ton of noise during spring.
And by late spring, early summer, you might be seeing him.
That's what I'm seeing. I wonder how quick it ends up being. When does the clock roll over on his contract? Because like we always have that date, right? Do you know it? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's fine. It's typically mid-May. It depends, right? Like it's kind of a moving target each year, but it's typically late April, early May, somewhere in there. Like the thing is, if Ricky Tiedemann stayed healthy last year and continued pitching the way that he was early in the season, he would have already made his big league debut. The Blue Jays wanted him up last year. He had all kinds of health stuff that went on with his biceps and kind of like very weird arm injuries that they were very cautious with. And that just set him back and he just wasn't able to get there. But the Blue Jays were counting on him to be a big leaguer last year. So I don't like if he comes out in Buffalo, is blowing the doors off and stuff is good and he's maintaining his velo deep into starts and like he looks like he's taking those developmental steps progressively. Yeah, I think that like May, June is totally realistic if there's a need at the big league level. That's why it's so important to see what does Manoah's stuff look like? Yeah. Where's the velo? Is the slider like that 10 to 11 horizontal break it was last year? Or is it back to like the 14, 15 horizontal it was when he was a Cy Young finalist? That's a massive difference. Is he landing that pitch in the zone? Is he confident on the mound? Is he wearing it between pitches? Like, well, what's his presence like? How quickly is he retiring batters? Does he have a 2-strike pitch? Is he able to get out of 2-strike situations, which he was not able to do last year? He got ahead last year. He couldn't get out of those situations. Batters spoiled a bunch of pitches, ended up working walks against him.
Yeah. God, that was the most painful thing about watching him. Yeah. Was when he would get ahead in a count and you'd be like, here we go, Alec, you're finally doing it. And then all of a sudden it's like, ball, okay, it's okay, spoil that one, ball, foul, walk. That felt like so much of Manoah's year. And then him just losing it as soon as that happened, the frustration boiling over of not being able to get those outs, not being able to get those punch outs.
Because the slider wasn't nasty enough, didn't move enough, the fastball wasn't hard enough, and his confidence, his ability to locate in the zone wasn't good enough. And those are the things you need to get, like, to finish off hitters.
It's really fascinating, too, to see. Like, he's a guy who was doing a regular hit on MLB Network. He was never afraid of a microphone. And I've seen the workout videos all off-season. Haven't really heard a peep from a guy who's very, very loud. And I don't mind it. Like, let your game do the talking sort of thing. Don't jump the gun. Don't set yourself up for failure. Don't take something on that you don't need to psychologically. Maybe try to step away from the game a little bit. Like, cool with all of it. I'm not trying to read into it that this is a negative, but it at least is a point of interest to me that a guy who has been as vocal as Alek Manoah throughout his career has been this silent, and that we've never gotten the I love being a Blue Jay. I want to be a Blue Jay. I want to make it work with the Blue Jays quilt.
Still young, still 24, 25. And there were people in that clubhouse who were talking to him about last year about doing less, you know, in terms of the extraneous stuff, the social media, the MLB Network.
If you're rolling, do that stuff.
Right, but last year,
when you suck, you can't. Yeah,
they were talking to him about like, hey, like you need to prioritize things in your life and cut from the bottom. Yeah. And right now, the MLB Network hits are at the bottom. Yeah. You're getting your slider back is near the top. But we forget, like Kevin Gausman was non-tendered when he was like 28 or something, right? Like some guys take a while to figure this stuff out. And now Kevin Gausman is that guy where when he's 0-2, it's like, here's a fastball at 96, like right at your chest, or here's a splitter down, and you're walking back to the dugout. He's that dude. He's that dude now. And when he was 27, 28, Kevin Gausman was lost, like like Manoah looked last year.
Who's the young guy you're most excited to see outside of Tiedemann?
I want to see Elvis's swing decisions. I want to see his approach, right? Because he took some steps last year, and that's been the big thing with him. Like, the power is different and special, but at the big league level, if you are chasing and expanding, if you aren't selective, I mean, you just get weeded out so fast because the pitchers are so good. So I want to see, like, his swing decisions, his selectivity, his discipline at the plate. So that's a big one. I'm a big Damiano Palmegiani guy. It's a guy who I was talking
a lot
up.
of people are really high on him.
I was talking him up late last year, man. He's got a ton of power, and he's very like Davis Schneider-esque in the way that he manages the strike zone, doesn't chase, has a really good idea of his approach, and is like looking for that fastball in that he can pull. And he can hit a lot of those homers that Davis Schneider did, where he like gets into that pull power and just shoots a rope like over the green monster. So if I'm picking somebody to have like a Babe Schneider arc this year, I'm probably picking Palmegiani.
Yeah. See, I like that in terms of the immediate impact guy, because that's another one of the roster questions to me is, it's fine having the Spencer Horwitz types. Every organization needs them, but is there another guy that can be a Davis Schneider for you?
Connor Cook's another good name in the bullpen. These guys had like 40% strikeout rates as a reliever in the minors.
We're a little bit more familiar with him than your boy.
You're familiar with Connor Cook?
More so than
Parmesan.
I've never seen him. Like I don't even know how to say his name yet properly. I'm like Parmesan. It's like Dean Parmesan. That's impossible to say. By the way, little breaking news. Bob Nightingale just reporting that Tim Anderson has landed a job with the Marlins to play shortstop. 1 year, $5 million contract. That's a tough. That's.
So that means Rosario signed yesterday, and then he was like, "All right, can't go to Tampa.
Yeah,
let's go to Miami."
$5 million though, not bad. 1 year for Tim Anderson, $5 million. And by the way,
he was atrocious last year.
He was bad.
He was really bad. And also, there's a lot of the off-field stuff with him that comes along with it.
Yeah, still $5 million. Don't hate it. If you're talking about a lottery ticket, that's not the worst buy for me.
Dude, Ahmed Rosario at $1.5 million to the Rays. Watch the Rays just like utilize that guy intelligently and deploy him in situations that play to his strengths, and end up with another like Harold Ramirez type.
I know. I don't understand how every year it's this. Like it's just anyway. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. I'm like, why is this? Is it, I get that they're cheap and they win more, and it is Florida and the state tax and maybe the lifestyle, but it's annoying that guys seemingly will be far more willing to go play for the Tampa Bay Rays than the Toronto Blue Jays.
It's just completely off the map, like attention-wise. Their media beat is one dude, right? Like
it's been the same guy for, 20 years? Mark Topkin? Yeah. It's like people know who he is just because he's the only guy.
He's the only guy.
Like anything Rays, you go to the one guy that they've had.
Totally. No state income tax. Most guys like live in Florida anyway. Mm-hmm. Weather's good. Like you don't have any pressure from like a fan base because there isn't one. Mm-hmm. You just have to buy in that like this front office is going to like use you as like a cudgel. Like they're not going to think of you as like a human.
No, you're truly an asset, a number. Yeah.
And whatever the model tells them to do with you, they're going to do. Yeah. So you're going to be playing different positions every day. You're going to be pinch hit for in the fourth inning.
Yeah, don't go to your manager. That's actually one of the most frustrating things is when you go to your manager about something, and I mean this in regular day life, and you feel like you're asking them a question, but it's outside of their control. And so you're like having a conversation that they're going to take to somewhere else, and you don't know what that layer is going to look like, and that must be so frustrating being on the Rays because you are 00101.
Yep.
And so you do go to Kevin Cash and you're like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about this, and he's like, I'm hearing you out, but you're not talking to a thing.
Yeah, no.
He's taking it. He's like, this is great. You can have your soundboard, but this is literally you're screaming into the void. This is the void. I am the human embodiment of the void. Okay, so last thing on the Jays, and I want to take a break. Overstated narratives, right? That's part of the theme of this discussion right now. What's overrated? What's underrated? Blah, 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 blah. Best shape of your life in spring that's all sports, right?
Yeah.
Best shape of your life. Oh, yeah. Boy, oh, boy. What is your read on the Vladdy stuff?
I don't care at all what shape he's in. Like I just don't. We've seen him good at various weights. Like we've seen enough
That's
baseball.
The only thing that I want to bring up is when he was the runner-up for MVP. What he wasn't shredded.
No, right? He wasn't cut up, right?
Yeah, that's just it. I'm with everybody. Hey, being in shape is probably better for all professional sports, right?
Sure.
He had a lot of barrels last year that didn't go over the wall, and I'm wondering if that's the actual positive impact of this is the fly balls that he hits. Maybe some more of them go over the fence because he's been in the weight room more. Like there's a reason guys take steroids is to be stronger. There's a reason you work out is to be stronger. But yeah, okay.
His hard hit data, his exit velos were still like among the league leaders. Like his problem hasn't been
weird,
right? Like not hitting the ball hard enough. So I remember like the athlete that I remember from recent like Blue Jays vintages who was in the best shape that I ever saw was Bradley Zimmer. Like that dude was a specimen. He was like 6'3", 220, just cut up, right? Like dude was just diced. Couldn't hit the baseball. Kind of a problem for him, but an absolute like Adonis, ran great in the outfield. It's baseball, man. It's not a bodybuilding competition. Like we don't judge on aesthetics. We judge on function and performance. So it's great that like Alek Manoah has dropped weight. How functional are you on the mound? Like what's your slider look like? Where's your velo at? How are you repeating your delivery? You would think that being in better shape would contribute to those things, but we've seen enough baseball now to know that there's like a diverse array of body types that can succeed at the highest level.
It can go the other way sometimes too, right? Like CC Sabathia has talked about this. When he lost weight, it's like he lost something.
Right.
Like that just happens with some guys. So do I think you should be in better shape? I think it's never bad to be in better cardiovascular shape. Right. Like I do think we obsess about like what the shell looks like too much a little bit, where it's like, oh, it's the shell versus like what's actually, what that person's resting heart rate is. Like,
right.
That's not the easier thing to find out. But yeah, for Vladdy, I think that for him to have that dip in production last year, and same thing with Manoah, to me, this is your season where you go, well, you guys got to find out if that's at least a part of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a guarantee that it's going to be better. It's not a promise, but it's the media thing with Manoah, right? You go, hey, maybe this isn't the biggest deal, but the way things are going, let's take a look the other way. Hey, if you're killing it, nobody's going to talk about your body. No one's going to talk about what shape you're in. If you suck and we're looking for reasons why when you've been so great, well, let's take a peek. Let's see what this can do for you. That's the way I'm viewing the Vladdy thing. Is I'm not buying in that just because he got in better shape. I am a believer in this, though. I said one part of it is I believe in the barrels and the hard hit rate, that if you're stronger, that's better for you. I know that's true from baseball. I know why guys took steroids. Okay? This is why, to be stronger. So that is good. I also am a big believer in the look good, feel good thing. Sure. And for Vladdy, psychologically in a sport like baseball coming into the year, and same thing with Manoah, where you go, hey man, I've been really working on my body and I'm feeling good about myself. And when I'm putting on a t-shirt, like I'm going down a size and that feels nice. Or, you know, people can see that I got muscles under here. That's a good feeling. Stepping out there, looking good.
A huge confidence sport. Baseball.
That's what I'm saying. It's just that, like, don't underestimate that part of this. It's just guys going, I got in the right shape. I put the work in, and now that's helped me get in the right mindset. The worry is if you suck out of the gate, how are you going to feel about that? And are you immediately just going to go back to comfort food to make you feel better about the struggles that you're having at the plate or on the mound?
The thing for me, like the biggest thing is longevity when it comes to like your conditioning, your body composition. So this is like Alek Manoah and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wanting to be productive and making a lot of money into their 30s. Like that's the biggest thing. I don't know. Huge. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference on their 2024 seasons. I think their function will make, you know, their productivity, their ability will make like have much more of a say. And they're still at the age right now where they can kind of overcome a lot of the body composition stuff that, you know, maybe a 35-year-old, 36-year-old couldn't. But I mean, CC Sabathia is still hauling 200 innings, like late, you know, into his mid 30s. Like, you know, Prince Fielder is playing like 162 games into his early 30s.
Broke down immediately though. Yeah.
And then had a bit of a back issue, right? Yeah. So, like, I just don't care what a player looks like. It doesn't tell me anything. It tells me nothing, you know? Like, how hard are you hitting the ball? Like, what swing decisions are you making? What's the shape of your slider? Like, what's your velo? How are you repeating your delivery? That tells me something. How you look on the first day of spring training doesn't. How are you going to hold up in July when it's like third city of a 10-game trip, day game after night game in Cincinnati? It's like 34 degrees. You've been carrying injuries. You're tired. You're in a fight with your girlfriend. Your lips are chapped. Everything's going wrong. And you're like, how are you going to show up there? That's what Bo was talking about yesterday.
That seemed overly personal. You get chapped lips. Like, we know that.
I was like, what's the lowest stakes thing I can put in here? But that's what Bo was talking about yesterday. It's like, hey, what are we going to be in July? We can say all this stuff now. It's all BS. It's all crap. What are we going to be when it gets tough in July? Because it's going to get tough.
Yeah, I'm not with you on the whole, I don't care what a guy looks like. I do. Like, I just think athletes should be in good shape and that they should at least be trying. If you have a path to success, if you are incredible, and like you said, the CC Sabathia thing, fine. Like, I'm not going to tell CC Sabathia in his prime to be doing anything. Like, you do what you're doing, brother. Yeah. Like, you go out there and you're just absolutely destroying everybody. Like, prime CC Sabathia is like, that's about as entertaining of a pitcher as you're ever going to get. Yeah. That's fine. Do your thing, man. You know, you're showing a Cespedes and you're first showing up and you're tearing the cover off the ball. You're ripping darts on this, like, I don't care. Do your thing. But I know that if you are doing athletics and you are trying to stay healthy, that we have a very conclusive set of data that says you are more likely to stay healthy in good shape, and you are likely to be stronger, and you are likely to be more confident. Like, all those things tie in together. I think that matters. What I don't buy is, I'm not taking it to the extreme of, oh, Vladdy got in shape, and so expect 900 OPS now because he's going to turn around. He's going to get around on a fastball quicker. Like, that part of it, I'm like, no. Like, you can, you know, as the youth say, miss me with that.
I just think
miss me with that, fam.
I think everyone's an individual. Byron Buxton is in great shape. Yeah. Can't stay on the field.
Some guys are just injury prone, though.
Anthony Alford, right?
But you still put yourself in the best position to stay healthy, and that is the best way to do it.
Right. But I don't think it's just a guarantee, like you're
of course
saying,
not.
right?
Nothing is.
Yeah.
Nothing's a guarantee.
I don't think you can draw a direct line between an athlete's appearance and their function or their performance. Sure. So that's why, like, when there's no evidence there for me, I just kind of disregard it.
Okay. So what is the evidence in terms of what the Jays wanted from Vladdy this offseason then? Because they are always telling him, like, we want you to be in better shape. Like, that is obviously an edict that they have. There's a reason why they didn't want him to always be going back home, that they were like, hey, spend a little bit more time in Florida. So there's something to it, right? Like, there is that is pressure that the organization has put on him. But from an actual baseball standpoint, like you mentioned, all the barrels and the hard hit rate and all the things that were like positive indicators for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., what were Do you have any insight into some of the stuff that they were giving him or the way that the organization is feeling in terms of the ways to turn those positive numbers into actual positive results?
I think he's got to pick better pitches to attack. How many times last year did you see him making out on
terrific.
that two-seamer in, right? Or that little change-up moving in, right?
And then me getting a text message from Ben Ennis every single time without fail after he did it.
Right? In like a one-strike count. You know, look, if you're in a two-strike count, like you got to do what you got to do, right? You got to have a two-strike approach. You got to be Bo Bichette. Like you got to make something happen there. But before you get to two strikes, like don't swing at that. I really think that was one of the biggest things with Vlad is that like he can get to a ton of pitches and he can make really hard contact on a ton of pitches, but it's just really hard to drive like a ball that is like in off the plate out of the park. We saw him do it against Garrett Cole. It was crazy, but like that's not consistent, right? You need to get to those fat pitches over the plate. You need to get to those mistakes. So you need to let those go, even if it's called a strike. If you've been getting jobbed by umps all year and you're like, man, they keep calling this a strike, I got to swing at it. No, you don't if you don't have two strikes. Two strikes, different story. But I do think it's like the approach and selectivity pre-two strikes and then what you do after two strikes. Because it was the most special thing about Vlad coming up through the minors, why everyone thought he'd be a superstar, was his discipline, the pitches that he chose to swing at and didn't, having more walks than strikeouts, all that stuff. That's what can really unlock him as a hitter.
Dude, you know what's so weird with that, though, is you're right. That was everything with him. Man, this guy just sees it. He's going to be the next Bautista of players we talk about who should be umpires after their careers.
Yeah.
Because he just sees the baseball. And but what do we say about players normally is, because there's always the guy got a pitch machine. He's going to be more selective. How many years did we do that with Pilar, right?
Grichuk.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, these guys are going to be more selective. They're going to be more selective. We've at least seen it with Vladdy, but it is strange to me now that it's like it went from these massive extremes of this is the thing that makes him special. This is the thing that he struggles with the most. This is a thing that we normally say does not develop with players, that it's like you show once you've hit the sample that Vladdy has had that we're pretty certain that this is who you are and this is what you do. And yet with him, he kind of feels like the variable. He's like the Neo in the Matrix, where it's like, this is the anomaly.
He tries to do too much sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's something that like he's talked about, the Jays have talked about. He's still young, right? And he tries to put the team on his back and have these huge moments and be the guy who wins the game. And you have to let those moments come to you. You can't be chasing those moments. And he's admitted that at times he has, expanded and tried to do too much. That's a hard thing to learn, but it's what could make him special is that combination of selectivity and discipline and the exit velos, right? Like Kevin Biggio is amazing selectivity and discipline. He just doesn't impact the ball the way Vlad does. If you add those swing decisions to like striking the ball really, really hard and making amazing quality of contact, that's when you get Aaron Judge. Like that's when you get Yordan Alvarez and like some of the best players in this game. So like that ability is there. Vlad hasn't been able to put it together at the big league level. But you're right. It's like it's really hard to develop pitch selectivity and like judging balls from strikes. That's why the Blue Jays like draft all these dudes who have really good selectivity and like really good plate approaches, and yet but no pop. Because they're like, we can probably teach you some power. We can get you bigger.
Let's see them actually come through on that.
But we can't teach you like selectivity.
Yeah.
We can't teach you to judge a ball from a strike. We can't teach your eyes to recognize that stuff. But we can put you on the Davis Schneider like workout plan and make you this little house and give you all this pull power, and maybe you'll be something in the big leagues. It's easier to develop power than it is to develop pitch recognition.
We got to run. Arden Zwelling, thanks for being here. Safe travels down to Spring.
Cheers.